Okay, folks, this video concerns exam essay structures, and it addresses, I suppose, the biggest problem that I see with the scripts, in the sense that the essays are not concise enough and they're not to the point. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an exam question, which you can see here, Michael Porter's generic strategy model, is a useful but simplistic model for strategy formulation to discuss the accuracy of this claim. So here we have an opinion, obviously. Now it's important to remember that you don't just simply agree with the statement. You have to critique it. So you can agree or disagree, or you can, take elements in the middle and say, yes, it is useful, however it is simplistic, for example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through three approaches, starting off with a poor approach to this question. And this is a question basically where the person takes a very broad description of answers of the strategic management. So it's kind of what I call a machine gun answer, hoping, whereby the student sprays bullets everywhere and hope that they'll hit the target at some stage. So in the introduction, the student might describe what strategic management is. Well and good if the question is related to specifically the nature of strategic management, but otherwise this is too vague. The next stage then, the student might describe the stages of strategic management, again catch-all approach, and not looking at specifically the generic strategy model. And in conclusion, the student might repeat all of these. Okay, so basically repetition of the above. In worst cases, in fact, you might get some place where a student confuses Michael Porter's generic strategy model with the 5 forces, which obviously is not good. I mean, you are effectively failing the question if you don't address the model itself. You need to address the model in some shape or form. Otherwise, the assumption is, or the impression that the marker gets, that you actually don't know anything about the strategy model. Now, the second approach is the underperformer approach, I call it. In most cases, the student actually is familiar with the model but doesn't realize that you actually have to address the question at a much earlier stage and stick to the question. Typically, the student might give an overview of Porter's model, which is fine. This is an introduction describing what the nature of the model is, setting the context. However, things go wrong in the main body. Essentially, what the student might do is might describe each of the 4 strategic options. Now, that's really not what the question asks. The question asks your opinion, really, of the model. And in this case, it doesn't say describe it. And this is the difference between final year and other years, I feel, at level 8, in a sense where, critical thinking is required. So instead of just describing things, you need to actually critique them. Finally, the student might only answer the question directly at the end and say, well, or might say, well, I have shown that it is a useful but simplistic model. In many cases, the student has not shown anything, simply just described the different strategies. So you should not just answer the question directly at the end. You need to answer that at the main body section, like in the next approach I'll show you now. So this is the correct approach. Now, in the introduction, again, you might set, again, looking at the context, say, describing this stage of strategic management. So you might say this is strategy formulation stage. Okay, so where essentially a company has to take into account its strengths and weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, how it can gain competitive advantage in the marketplace. You might give a brief overview of the Porter's model. You might even throw in, you can see there the model, the box in the top right hand corner. As I said, the nature here is not to describe simply the model, but to critique it. Describing the model would be simply a kind of level 7 or level 6 approach. So take the question, always stick to the question, and divide, possibly, this is one approach, into useful, as in the pros or the advantages of the model, or look at the simplification element of it. Okay, so the purpose of this video is not to actually answer the question, it's simply to describe how you might approach it. It's up to you to do this yourselves. But it is, again, coming back to the question. Always move back to the question. In conclusion, you should perhaps refer to a particular person example that you have for current trends. And maybe you might use the business that you studied in assignment 1 as an example, so where you did a strategic analysis, to use that business as a way of critiquing the model. What I'll do now is I'll just go through again the essay style structure that the students should use, starting off with the introduction. Outline the context, the stage perhaps that in strategic management that the question refers to. You might describe the concepts. So if you're asked for what is strategy implementation, for example, like if a question relates to strategic implementation, you might describe what is meant by that. Structure, for example, culture. If they are addressed in a question, describe what you understand the concepts as being. Now, you don't have to give definitions. Your own words will be fine. In many cases, will be better. Then link it to the main body, outline what you're going to discuss. And in the main body, answer the question directly, and always create a structure. Think about how you're going to answer the question, how you're going to structure it. Okay, so you have 3 questions, 3 hours, you have time. It's better to prepare, take time to create a structure, and then write rather than just jumping in. In the conclusion, give your personal opinion or outline the current trends. So, what I don't recommend is the approach taken in some cases with essays, as in the introduction people say, tell the reader what you're going to write about it, and then conclusion, sum up what you've already written. It's a short essay. You don't have, what happens in exams when people do that is that they repeat constantly. They do not add value. So it's important to remember this. Stick to this structure and you will give yourself the best chance possible to get the highest marks. And remember, of course, for all essay style questions, give examples using case studies that you're familiar with. That concludes this video.